All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Founding Titans Startup Ecosystem Series. Today we have Martin Martinez with Founder Institute, and we're going to be discussing a deep dive on the Austin, Texas ecosystem. Going to be talking sorry about that. Going to be talking about different aspects for how the ecosystem actually works here in Texas, the current trends and opportunities in the venture capital space, capitalizing on the corporate relocations that have come here, as well as other emerging trends within the ecosystem. And so a little bit about myself. I am Gabriel Rucker, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Founding Titans. And Founding Titans is a community-focused relationship optimization platform. And we're building that to help pre-seed to Series A startups with finding the right connections and resources for their businesses. We're also working on an AI matchmaking system to be able to match founders with funding opportunities like grants and investors, as well as communities and events that are startup-centric within the ecosystem. And so, I want to go ahead and kick it over to Martin, and then get a little bit of background info on him, and then we'll keep going from there. So, how are you doing, Martin?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
Good, good.
Where are we broadcasting all this to?
So we are on LinkedIn Live right now. So after this is done, everybody should be able to see a recording of this, just in case anybody
Oh,
misses anything. So yeah.
all right. Well, what's happening, LinkedIn community? As Gabriel mentioned, my name is Martin Martinez. My friends call me Martin. Y'all are welcome to do the same. Been in Austin, Texas, about 20 years. Seven-generation Texan. I grew up in San Antonio, a little bit in Dallas. But I've called Austin home for almost 2 decades. Um, Started my career here, might end my career here. Who knows? Time will tell. But I'm privileged to be able to work with the Founder Institute, where I had the opportunity to bring this to the Lone Star State almost 8 years ago now. We've helped over 150 companies launch since then across the state. Houston, Dallas, San Antonio is actually coming up on board. Hopefully by the end of this year, we've got a event working with Texas Venture Fest next month. We're doing a launch. So if you're watching this in San Antonio, please come on out. But either way, we turn ideas into companies. Full disclosure, Gabriel with Founding Titans also went through our program not too long ago. So we definitely know each other well. He's seen what the experience can provide in terms of the value, the understanding, the wherewithal, just knowing what to do before you realize you shouldn't do it, and having a community of people that can support you before you realize you need it.
Yeah. No, it's been an amazing experience. I mean, I've had over 10 years of experience working with startups. I'm on my third company now. And even then, there was still a wealth of experience that I got from the program, as well as being able to actually get some additional advisors, just being able to make a lot of tweaks, both minor and major for the company, as we actually were coming into a new pivot for Founding Titans. And so, obviously really grateful to Martine, Riley, Shane, all the other people with the team over there, especially all the other mentors that help out and put the program on. I am also a mentor now myself, helping out a lot of the founders and entrepreneur in residence for the program. It's been a really great experience. That's why I wanted to have you on here, because we've actually had this talk specifically several times in probably 50,000 different ways. And so I know that this is going to be a really fun one today. Let's jump right into everything. So, let's talk about the Texas in general, and then we'll go deeper into Austin itself. And so, what trends are you currently seeing in the Texas venture capital landscape?
Very direct, Gabe. Hope I don't make anybody too mad in this hour, but I might. Let's wind back a little bit. I guess when I've had a couple startups over the years, that's being light in terms of that answer. But we've venture capital started really the primary focus back in decades ago with the hardware piece. We think about the semiconductor industry and how it changed the technological landscape of Texas, moving it not just from an energy state into hard tech. As that grew, especially in the South, Central Texas area, it started expanding into more hardware consumer products. So you start thinking about Dell Technologies, and then software that was being developed for these hardware technologies at the consumer and the enterprise level. So the money followed based on what was being built. Excuse me. So, by the dot-com era, and you have a very strong ecosystem of hardware companies with Dell. You have these strong software companies that are providing enterprise level SaaS products to these large or mid-sized to large companies. And that was really what Austin was. We didn't have consumer technology. We didn't have, or Austin, in Texas in general, we didn't have any consumer tech like you would think an Uber or Facebook. We didn't have smartphones yet, so it makes sense. But as we got through the early 2000s, you started to see this shift of wealth from the top to many of these early companies. Think like Tivoli, which sold to IBM, is always a top of mind one. Again, a ton of companies that would sell either Dell or to IBM or any of these larger blue chip stocks. Now, as that wealth trickled down, the people that knew what was coming down the pipeline in terms of trends started investing more into SaaS. So you started to see originally a big firm called Austin Ventures that started in obviously here, but also expanded outwards into Texas, would invest strictly in B2B SaaS. So that's where a lot of the money was going for a long time. It really wasn't until about the 2010s, early 2010s, when you really started to see, again, the proliferation of the iPhone, smartphone boom, the convergence of geolocation technology, social media technology, as well as the smartphone itself and the provision of apps, where consumer tech and venture funds really started to come into the fold, focusing on that. So you started to see more of that. As we, get closer to the end of that decade, heading into what we see now, it's definitely diversified across the board. There's been a heavy focus on specificity and education in multiple layers of venture capital in various hyper-focused sectors. Now, when you look at Houston, you see med tech, you see energy tech. Now climate tech is more because they just had a big climate tech conference just last week. When you look at Dallas, you have fintech, some consumer stuff, but also, you're thinking, more consumer focused products, CPG, etc. Austin now has a swath of all of that. There's, with the pandemic, you saw a ton of venture capital firms uproot out of California or just the coast in general and move and set up here. Um, and then on top of it, more investment, more startups, more people. You know, truth be told, jury's still out on what the sentiments are looking like with Austin specifically. But as you've seen over the decades, specificity is starting to really show its face. The investors become more savvy, and you're getting buy-in from not just the people with the money, but the institutions, the universities, the corporates. They understand the need to invest in the future and also have focus on what they're investing in. So the savviness in the region has certainly increased substantially, not just within the last 10 years, certainly within the last five.
Yeah. No, I mean that's a really great breakdown of how everything has kind of progressed here within the Texas venture landscape. And yeah, so I mean, you talked about some of the unique opportunities that have presented itself, but maybe let's go a little bit deeper into just Texas as a whole. Because I mean, I know even opening up a new office in San Antonio or a new section for FI out there. I know that a lot of good things are happening out in Houston, Dallas, and obviously Austin as well. And I know that there's been a lot of articles recently kind of about essentially how the ecosystem is progressing here. And we'll dive a little bit more into those later. And I'll put some of those references inside of the chat for everybody to see. But yeah, that's I guess the next question would be, how you describe, what those opportunities are compared to other regions in the U.S.
Oh, I want to make sure I'm hearing this clear. Just like what makes Texas unique.
Yeah,
in terms of what we're doing? Yeah.
what's the secret sauce, I guess, to Texas that you've seen compared to some of the other ecosystems that are out there?
I'm just trying to make this not political at all. But if I took all of the, it's a weird year, it's election year, so I'm just going to avoid all that stuff. But if you stripped it down just to strictly economic utilitarian qualities, got a lot of land. Relatively speaking, is cheap. As a seventh gen Texan, I find that absurd, but it is relative to what you see on the coast. So it's enticing for folks to want to move here. We have a lot of it still versus not so much of it at price at a very high price point, like in California on the coast. Right? But you look at California because it's the majority of the exodus train is coming from there. At least over the last couple of years, it's tapered off a little bit, but still there. So you're seeing that with companies. Burden of tax is much, much lower relative to the coast as well for the same reasons. So we make it very business friendly. Uh, the independence of our energy grid, that's a debatable concept. But, given what we all experienced for those of you that were here during the Great Freeze, I guess is what we're calling it in 2021, that, that, that quality may be a dubious proposition these days, but the independence of it does make it interesting to think about in terms of politics. What happens if Texas is by itself? We could space programs, energy, tax. The CHIPS Act was also a really big thing from the most recent administration in terms of the majority of that funding from the CHIPS Act is getting funneled into chip manufacturers in Texas. So now we are the juggernaut in North America that is producing chips at a faster clip, depending on what you're reading, than what we're seeing overseas. So the next 20 years in Texas has the plan, the wherewithal to actually continue to sustain this growth. That's what makes it so special. It's centralized nature, and we saw this when I was working as an early employee at Facebook. Austin was the very first satellite office they built outside of Palo Alto or Menlo Park, where they were originally at before they moved to Palo Alto. Wait, I flipped that. Palo Alto, now it's Menlo Park. But they did that for the centralization of it. You're about 2.5 hours from any side of the country versus longer flights. So from a logistical standpoint, too, there's a reason why people are moving here. And this strategy alone makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, I've seen a lot of those shifts here because a lot of people ask me continuously, is like, why stay in Austin, right? Like, you've got all these other ecosystems that are out there, and what are the unique aspects to Texas? And really, and I've only seen bits and pieces for some of the other ecosystems that are here. I've mostly dived into the Austin part of it, but from what I've heard from everybody, I mean, the community aspect here is one of the biggest drivers for everybody actually being able to be successful as well. And I think that something that I've never seen before. Actually, I can attest to that. I mean, for the Vegas market and the Phoenix market, I know both of them are working on some of those aspects now. Actually, I've talked to some community builders out there. But yeah, that during my entire time of working with a bunch of different companies, 40 plus different startups on contracts and everything, this is the friendliest, I guess, environment and the most like in not just terms of the individuals in the startup ecosystem, but also building things out here, I would say. Yeah. And so thank you for that. And let's, I guess, is there anything specific to Austin now that you want to add? And if not, we can also go down a little bit more, and we'll probably tap into more of those things as we go in. I know we were talking about
Let's drill in. Let's drill in.
So, yeah. So who are the major players in the startup ecosystem, including investors, accelerators, incubators within Austin?
That's a little harder question to answer. Some of them definitely make people mad. I mean, I'll just say this. There's a lot of folks in town. A lot of folks in town that are new. There are folks in town that would call themselves incumbents. Some people would call themselves legacies, right? Organizations as well. I just out of the sanctity of just this conversation, I may avoid just anything explicit, but there's been a great evolution of what the startup ecosystem has looked like just over the last 10 years. I started a company about 14 years ago. There was this little sliver of a co-working space at the top of the Omni. It was, built. It's the only game in town. It's fine, whatever. But there really wasn't anything. The universities UT Austin was pretty much doing a lot of the incubator kind of things. You don't really see incubators anymore. We're founders to startup accelerator, and that's kind of how we frame ourselves as. Because yeah, we move things forward. We're not taking things already and then continually again, to the word suggests, incubate them. But there really wasn't a lot of it. And again, at that point, the venture capital firms are strictly focused on B2B SaaS. Wow, very exciting stuff. But high margin, high value, and high exit kind of opportunities. So it made sense why they were going for that kind of money. You've seen that evolution, the diversification rather over the last decade really come into form. But you saw there's certainly a pre-pandemic and a post-pandemic look at it. Right? There was a proliferation of co-working spaces. There's about 2015 to about 2020. And think the WeWorks, and then Galvanize was a place that we really loved, that we hosted our programs at before the pandemic. We still miss that place so much. It was a beautiful space, and all the people that worked there. But those are just a sampling of all the other spaces, right? There's a lot of places that will build themselves as accelerators and all this other stuff, but they might just be co-working. Right, they're just co-working. Like, don't oversell yourself, right? You might have a lot of space and you host some events, but you're just co-working. And again, not pointing at anybody else explicitly, but and there's a few of those like that. But we've also seen again. So that was pre-pandemic, right? Post-pandemic, we lost a lot of those facilities, right? Some of them were just hanging on by a thread. You could probably throw a rock in any direction in 2018 and you'd hit a WeWork. Now, I mean, you could probably count them on one hand, just in town. It's true. And the model, and you've all seen the movies. I'll for the podcast, I'm sure. It's pretty funny. I tell a story about that, in one of our sessions. Now, long answer to a short question. However, it's hard to pinpoint. There's a lot of players that come in. What I love right now in terms of VCs is, through a lot of our work with our sister organization, my mentor, our founder, Adeo Resi, started VC Lab during the pandemic. I was working closely with him on our postgraduate stuff, and we discovered that, a lot of the markets that we were operating in just don't have seasoned, not just investors, but venture capital firms. And we're holding them to a standard akin to what you would see on the coast, where you got to go find 100 VCs and pitch them. Like, there's barely two, in a particular region. It's like, well, we got to do something about that. It's not just about educating the investor; it's about teaching them how to launch venture funds. So I would call them baby VCs. We have a lot of baby VCs in Austin. A lot of them have they mentor for Founder Institute, but they've also certainly have gone through VC Lab. They're launching funds. They're trying to raise venture capital. So you see a proliferation of all that. A lot of them are really great friends and colleagues, and they mentor. But there's a lot of folks out there too who maybe didn't finish that program, or they're struggling to close their fund. So you have to kind of really ask the right questions beyond what's your thesis, what's your check size. It's like, are you deploying capital right now? So you're seeing a lot of that. You're seeing a lot of organizations, again, building themselves as accelerators and blah, 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 but they're not. They have no curriculum. They have no structure. It's glorified co-working, like, go away. And then you have great community organizations that are just strictly the best at events. I like to think we do pretty well. We do an event. I'm an event producer by trade. So, and your mileage may vary. What's great is the density and the concentration that you find here in Austin versus in really any of the other markets in Texas. And I love them all. But the density you're going to find in Austin, you're going to be able to walk a couple blocks and find a networking event, drive just, 5 minutes that way, find another great networking event. And that's just a mixture of, the urban design of having a lot of bars, restaurants, offices, all within really close walking distance. The ways, downtown is kind of separated with east side and a lot of cool eclectic spaces. Gentrification, is part of that, unfortunately. But thinking about the central side of downtown, right around Congress, that kind of fun stuff. So again, I definitely danced around that answer, Gabriel.
Yeah, I know. Usually we like it's a tougher question, I think, and the people that are in the Austin ecosystem currently, I think, know why people sort of dance around that question a little bit. But it is still an important question for us to ask, especially for people who aren't really as tapped into the ecosystem or want to find new places. I mean, I know that I think everybody has their own specific recommendations, right? Like when people ask me, I say, okay, check out FI, check out the team with Fiesta. And they're doing amazing work. They're a community here. They're actually doing one of their monthly meetups today at what is it called? I believe at 6 o'clock. And they a bunch of other communities and organizations out there. Opportunity Austin, also a really great portion of the community that I think I didn't even know about, honestly, until I went through FI, Roland, and Lily and everybody over there. Really amazing, and definitely check out their platform that they have for free on the economic development side of everything. And definitely making sure you have your startup listed there are just a couple of things that I can personally recommend. But also, yeah, it's it can be a loaded question out here for that. And I mean, also. Yeah, it depends because I mean I've personally experienced what you've talked about with like the newer VCs coming into play and people deploying capital or lack thereof, right? And being transparent, I think from jump, and I've normally seen that with people like on Fund Two, where they're like, hey, you know what, we're currently raising ourselves right now. We'll keep you in mind if we get to a certain point. You guys are still raising. We'll have to have a conversation, but yeah, right now that's just not something they're able to do. They might be able to do intros and stuff like that. And then there are some where, you have a bunch of meetings and like you're kind of going around in circles. And then they're like, oh, yeah, no, we're actually not deploying capital right now. Cool. So like it's something that we've all seen as well. It kind of in the space. And I know that's kind of highlighting some of the notable, organizations that are making an impact. Do you have any startups that you've seen or worked with out here that really gets you excited?
Well, full disclosure, I advised Gabriel formally. I have to say that.
It
The
does, yeah.
fiduciary, I guess that fiduciary thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, I love what you're doing, buddy.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, we
Not
need more
about me for
tools.
this portion of the show. I
We
want to
need, yeah,
highlight some of the other people.
we need more tools to do that. Certainly out of your cohort, we have some really interesting folks. Olivia, um, Olivia with the TAP active or the activation project, also known as Tapped. First real company that we had come through our program that was focused on the psychedelic space. Olivia's really been she's been a psychedelics practitioner for a number of years. It certainly helped change her life and the trajectory of her life. And I've seen it work well with people with post-traumatic stress, a lot of trauma. Think veterans of war, like people with sustained childhood abuse, trauma, those kind of things. Psychedelics versus what the traditional pharmaceuticals would be able to provide do leaps and bounds, regardless of what your perspectives are on it. Hippies, blah blah blah. Who cares? It works, and in the right ways. So when you're doing it in the right structure, just like any other kind of therapy, there needs to be an aftercare process. Just like rehab, just like you're getting surgery on your leg, you're gonna have to do rehab for a while just to make sure that you're getting adjusted and you're used to this new knee that they put in or whatever. That's lacking in the psychedelics care space. You might have a journey as they refer to it, and then what happening afterwards. The integration process is what they refer to. How do you integrate those learnings and that experience, help resolve said traumas and whatever, and assimilate more effectively into your life to reduce those things that are giving you pain, mentally, spiritually, wherever. So her application is helping manage that aftercare process, working with patients and practitioners, really innovative. And yeah, she just recently launched the product out. and I believe the beta at this moment. So really looking forward to seeing how that evolves, and watching her growth in that industry. Historically, we've had a couple others that have always been there, been doing really amazing work. Ashley Connell, out of our third cohort, now she's been in operations almost 6 years, is certainly someone that I've always admired. We've known each other since middle school, actually. We went to college together, reconnected, throughout our early careers. And as I was starting Founder Institute, it's 2018 now. She reached out to me and just said, "Hey, my marketing agency is just kind of, we've lost our biggest client. I don't know if I'm gonna keep doing this. However, I could use I could have a conversation with you, right?" I'm like, "Sure, let's have that conversation." She's just telling me a lot of, her aspirations, her goals, and, also what her fears, and having children, starting a family. She wants to work, she wants to earn, she wants to build something for herself. But, the biggest fear in her head was, as soon as I leave the workforce, start a family, I'm going to lose 40% of my earning power, according to these Harvard Business Review studies, et cetera. And it just kind of terrified her. She wanted to fix that. So her company, Prowess Project, has always been on a mission for that. It started with getting formerly working moms that stopped to have a family back into the workforce so they could get their earning power back through upskilling, education, and then job placement. Now, especially with the pandemic, she did very, very well. She's always been profitable since day one. Great client list of companies that are looking to hire these women. Initially, that was her core demographic. That was her focus. She's since expanded, especially with the pandemic, into what you refer to as an online business manager. So people that are running e-commerce firms, consultancies, agencies, coaching, whatever. You need somebody to actually manage all the other things, the passwords, the finances, the payments, blah, 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 blah. The little bit more work than what you would need out of some worker out of the Philippines, a virtual assistant that's just like booking your dinner and getting your flights. Like, this is more sensitive information. You need a higher fluency in just business savviness, and the flexibility of being able to have them not in the office all the time. You can just call them. So the online business manager, the OBM, is now where her focus is. She educates folks how to become these people. So look them up, Prowess Project. I've always loved Ashley's work. She's never really had to take a lick of venture capital either, to the chagrin of many VCs here in town. So, just those two off the top of my head, definitely I have a great fondness for, and I love their visions. I love their missions, and I love watching our founders. We have 155 across the state, so sorry I didn't name all of you.
Yeah, no, that's what is it called? There's definitely a lot of people in the FIFM that are doing amazing things, and also Olivia's going to be pitching tonight as well at Fiesta. Also, I'm going to be pitching tonight at Fiesta again, so it'll be a very fun time tonight. But yeah, I wanted to make sure that I put their LinkedIn's inside of the chat as well. I know that I got the Prowess Project. About to drop that in there right now as well for anybody that wants to check out those two businesses, and already put Tap and Olivia's information in there as well.
And Ashley Connell's usually on LinkedIn all the time. We're using Restream to broadcast this out. She usually does weekly, weekly live streams as well, interviewing people, sharing stuff. She's got a really big community on there online. So yeah, it's been beautiful to watch.
Yeah, and I'm tossing her information in here as well. But yeah, while I'm tossing that in, what advice? I know this is going to be really, really good one. What advice do you give new entrepreneurs and investors looking to get involved within the East Austin's startup ecosystem?
All right, well, let's split that in half.
Yeah.
For investors, don't talk up a big game and don't follow up. If you're a baby VC, just say you're a baby VC. If you actually have the time to write checks and you actually have the connections and the value that you're saying, presenting to folks at the happy hours or at the dinners or wherever, show up and deliver. Or just get out of town. We don't need you. There's plenty more of Baby VC or anybody else out there who can actually write a check. Okay. Be a sponge, a dry, maybe not a fully dry sponge, but moist sponge, but not a fully saturated sponge. Because you want to absorb and listen. Too many investors, especially first timers that I've met over the years, just want to swing their knowledge around. Again, we're on LinkedIn, so I'm trying to keep it PG. Just don't try to just show off how smart you are. I could care less. It's not your money you're probably spending either, so like, calm down. Like just listen, add value as value is needed, but show up, right? I've met many great investors who come and give so much time to our founders and Founder Institute, and then they become advisors. They might even write that first check. Then I have others that just show up, say yes, yes, yes. They don't show up for anything. I will never call you back, and I'm never going to send you a deal because you're all smoke, right? So show up, follow through, add value, and value is a trite thing to say in the VC world because it means so many different things. But whatever you deem as your value add, actually give it. Don't just say that you have it. Because I probably won't see you in 6 months. You'll probably get out of town. You think this town sucks because nobody was groveling at your feet, and you move back to wherever the hell you came from. Better off without you. See how much I love VC. It's like such a love-hate relationship. For the founder, there is a diminishing returns on the amount of networking events you can attend. I know this from experience. I can see a starving founder by how often you're hitting the bar and eating the food. So be mindful of how much pizza you're shoveling down your gullet at Fiesta tonight. I'm not saying you, Gay. I'm saying anybody else is watching. Or how many IPAs you pound before you get on the mic to pitch, right? You can burn a bridge before you realize you're on it. While there's a romanticism behind the idea of the starving founder, again, there's a diminishing return if you're showing up at everything. And it tells me you may not actually be spending time building, right? Like, when are you building if you're just constantly at like all these networking events? If you're ready to hit the payment fundraising, there's a different story. There's a reason. There's intentionality while you're going. But I'd say about half the people I meet, at least half the people I meet at these functions, and I rarely go to these functions if they're not my own anymore, is they're just plain founder. You think it's like the movies. You think it's like the podcasts. Most of that's BS. Most of it is. And we're kind of on a podcast right now. I'm sorry, I'm not giving you BS. This is the honest truth, guys. How many of y'all are watching LinkedIn right now? Focus is your best friend. A lot of people lack focus in the beginning of the journey, and it's for lack of listening, taking any advice, or just the lack of the knowledge of what you're supposed to do, which is why we do it. What's what we do at Founder Institute. We try to teach you through stories of our own failures and wins on the things that you should be considering when executing and things to avoid when executing. And if you don't listen, that's fine. This is a higher probability than normal that you're going to fail. And most of you will fail. I hope I'm not discouraging too many of you, but most of you will fail. And if you don't ask for help or listen to feedback or take advice from people who probably have gone through this route because you know better, then you're not going to go anywhere. You will fail. There's a high percentage of people who quite literally just want a pat on the back from me, $1 million, and Elon on speed dial. It's like my mentor, Deo, like they went to college together. Like you can Google it. Deo, he's in the books. But some people quite literally think that because they're so smart and awesome and great. And like everybody wants to take them out for a steak dinner. It's like, no, dude, no, you're not. Like, let's bring it back down to sea level. Look us in the eyes and tell us, is this something you really want to spend the rest of your life doing? And are you willing to sleep on concrete floors for a summer to do it? That sounds a very specific, experience, but I've done something like that before. I've done those things before. The entrepreneurial life is hard. It's lonely. Everyone that loves you will call you crazy, and not in a constructive way. And if you're not ready for that, keep your nice, cushy day job and don't play founder.
Yeah. No, I agree for all of those points, honestly. Especially, I mean, both on the VC and the founder side. I mean, everybody can tell on both of those fronts. If you're just going to events constantly, like the only times when, you know, your entire 5 days of your calendar should be booked with things to go to for any startup ecosystem or just any city period, where you're hitting event after event, is if you're actually getting customers there, or if you're, doing customer development, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Because again, this is what I say about intentionality, right? Have clear
exactly.
goals as to why you're doing this. If you're looking to get customers, go get customers and go to the events where you're going to find potential customers. If you're going to
Yeah.
go, if you're going to go try and just build your networking, you just want people to see you and be seen, pat you on the back, then get out of here. Like you're wasting your time. You're wasting my time if I'm there at that function. Just going to be waiting for my drink to finish. I'm probably finishing it faster so I can be like, all right, good to meet you. I'm going to go get another drink. Go talk to this rando person, Magoo. Just have at least one clear goal as to why you're going to each of these events. I recommend three, right? Now, maybe it's primary things, customers. Maybe it's some brand awareness, but I'd probably put that down at the bottom because that's more of a nebulous kind of way to measure. Maybe again, if you're looking for investors, building that Rolodex of investors, not asking them for money right off the bat because they're just going to give you advice or ignore you. These are people too, right? I have a really good friend in the investor space, great investor, who says, he says that, VCs are people. We're not ATMs. And I can't tell you how many people go beep, beep, boop, 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 thinking I'm just going to spit out money like I'm some machine. And like, that's rude. It's very disingenuous when you're having that first initial conversation, from a founder speaking to an investor. And that's the fastest way to burn a bridge before realizing you're on it.
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, also it's, what value are you actually bringing to the table? Like if it's just, your company or whatever, and like you're automatically, your first words coming out of your mouth are, what can you do for me? Then this ecosystem isn't really going to do much for you in general, because people will just, basically nod their head and say, yeah, no, that's great, and then just never speak to you again. I've seen a lot of that too. I mean, I've even done it sometimes as well, where, you can tell that, people are more disingenuous than that. And, you might think that you're playing other people or you're doing whatever. Trust me, everybody can tell, especially out here. You can be, singled out very quickly for doing those
Oh,
aspects. And so
oh
highly recommend
yeah.
you do that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, even on the investor side,
Yeah.
I've run into some, again, respectfully, my investor friends, I've run into some morons out there. Morons. That, again, they come with a lot of their own biases and presumptions. Um, won't like archetype them by any means, but because they span the gamut, right? And but at the same time, what's frustrating is that they force these biases on other people. They expect you to, they're very rigid in kind of how they'll converse or how you engage them. And I understand processes. I have my own as well, but, you're not doing yourself any favors. You're not going to get people banging on the door to want to get your money. You're making it very hard for you to deliver returns to the people that might be giving you money to invest on their behalf. So it's just like, what are you doing, man? Maybe you should just stick to, being a retired, dentist or something.
And you're not wrong.
It's taking me a lot more coffee, Gabe, halfway through this, so I could finally get into a rhythm. So I'm sorry, buddy.
Oh no, you're good, man. That's why I brought you on for this one specifically, because I think you're one of the few people in the ecosystem that will be very candid about things, just like me. I am very much no BS. Like if you ask me a question, I'm gonna give you the answer. I don't care who I piss off, because if what I'm saying pisses you off, then just fix your stuff. like clean up your own house, so I don't have to tell the truth, because I'm not gonna lie for anybody in the ecosystem or sugarcoat stuff, because at the end of the day, like if I'm introducing somebody within my network, like everything is a networking game. Like if I'm using my network to provide you value, you better have some value to bring to the table. And that's for
Yeah.
founders, investors, community builders. Everybody does that, which is why also, if you ask somebody just directly and you don't even know them, hey, like, can you introduce me to XYZ or can you introduce me to this investor? They're going to tell you no because they don't know who you are or how you're going to operate. And they don't want that individual that they're introducing you to view them negatively or in a bad light. And I've had founders that have come back to
Mhm.
me when I used to sugarcoat things when I first moved here and I didn't want to step on toes. And people have said, dude, why didn't you warn me? I'm like, well, you know what? That's on me. And I have had that happen. And so there's no reason to do that. And that's why I brought you on specifically for this talk. Because, we talked about the Texas ecosystem as a whole and all that stuff, one of the other previous sessions and all of that. But going really deep into, what are the good and the bad parts of the ecosystem. Because if you don't know what's wrong, then we're not able to fix them, in my opinion,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah, and I give a more specific talk on the breakdown of what a good ecosystem looks like. And again, I have slides prepared for this particular one because as you told me in the pre-brief, this would be more conversational, which is great. But I give like an actual 101 breakdown of what a good ecosystem looks like.
Yeah.
One thing that I guess my experience has given me, it's a blessing, I guess, at this point, or a curse, depending on how you look at the startup ecosystem, is that I've seen it in many different ways across the state. It's not just the Austin perspective. I've seen how Houston has grown, but also backslid. Every city does. Austin certainly have done it even more recently than some people will admit. But every city, Dallas, San Antonio, each of them have the same structure you need to apply. So some buckets are missing. Others are oversaturated. Others are in buckets pretending that they are this thing versus not. Right? You have community kind of style event, community and event focused organizations. Founder Institute certainly has a lot of that because we host about 35 events just in Austin alone every year. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds all around the world, thousands potentially. Um, you know, but then there's true like ideation organizations, founder institutes here as well, or going 0 to 1. After that, you have pre-seed and seed-based kind of programs. Think like the TechStars, the Sputnik ATXs, the YCs, all that, that are now maybe funding or they're getting you to funding. Right, so Founders has got a little bit of bleed over on both of these buckets, especially on the events and community side, because that's what I really love that part of what we do. We're the only organization that provides structure in this way. There's a lot of organizations that say they do. Tell me who they are, and I'll show you a liar. Especially one that's been doing it for 15 years. No one does it this way. They never have. If they did, they don't do it anymore because it's hard. It's very hard. We're starting to actually build programs like this out for municipalities, for economic development organizations all around the world. So, governments are trusting us with this, right? Versus other orgs who, again, talk a big game, don't deliver. They just take the money and run. So again, as you get past that, now you're really just getting into VC territories. Right? You're getting into funds that might do seed to Series A, you know, egg B and up, and you start keeping until you start getting into growth capital, right? So you finally get the exits, and then you got those big, big monster funds that will also help you prep, to go ring a bell on a stock exchange or get you ready for a merger or an acquisition or something of the sort, right? So that's the ecosystem from start to finish, right? A lot of people say they play on the beginning of it, the top of it, but they don't. They don't. They say they do a lot of stuff towards the end of it. They don't. They're just the community piece, and they need to just stay in that lane.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's, all relevant and true points. And you brought up something that I wanted to highlight as well and dive into, which is, particularly around the Austin ecosystem and kind of the diversity behind it, right? So I'm actually going to post in the chat here an article from Carta, or not an article, but a post by Peter Walker discussing some of the data that they found for the current fundraising market over the last year and how much funding has actually been raised in the major metropolitan areas, right? So with that, I'm going to ask this question. So with Austin ranked 6th for digital startups and with 5th for physical startups in the United States, How can founders in both of these industries actually, leverage this system to access more capital? And, you know, how, because we've discussed at the beginning of this conversation, um, what made this possible, right? With the, companies like Dell and, how hardware actually, was big in Austin and everything else. And so now really figuring out, okay, we know where we rank, we know where we sit. Um, you know, how do the people actually tap into these resources?
Mm. Well, again, there's a mix, and there might be some dissonance to some of the advice I was just giving a minute ago versus what I'm about to
Yeah.
say now. But it is putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
I had a great mentor once tell me, I didn't listen to him for years, but you don't realize what you'll get if you don't ask for help. Told me that. I didn't listen to him. I listen to him now a lot. I ask for help all the time. But this is something that we train our founders to do on day one is asking for what we can do at the end of your pitch. And don't say money. I don't want to hear money because everybody needs money. I could use some money. Gabe, you'd love some money too, right? Like everybody, it's duh. It's a duh question. Like, get out of here. Of course you need money.
Yeah.
Go away. It tells me you haven't thought too much about anything.
Yeah.
What can I really do to help you? Be thoughtful, intentional, and focused. In many cases, it might be advice in certain areas of the business building process you still have no idea about, or you're not as fluent as you are in other aspects. You might be needing introductions to folks that can help you maybe acquire that first or second or fifth customer. You might be somebody to help you keep those customers happy. You might be across the board. You might need help understanding which kinds of investors you need to be talking to versus, hey, just point me in the front of an ATM. Boop, 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 boop. Like, dude, there's too many overeager founders here in town that do not do the work. They don't do the diligence. They just show up thinking, "Oh, I'm so smart. I went to a crappy low-tier Ivy League school and I worked at McKinsey. Da, 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 I know everything about everything." Oh, cool, awesome. No, you're not. You're going to fail miserably, and you're going to go back to your cushy consulting job. I guarantee it. Because you're not asking for help, you're over assuming that everybody knows exactly what you're selling already, but you don't know it, and you're not putting yourself out there in a position of openness, not necessarily vulnerability, but to a certain point of I still don't know too much about a lot of things. I want to grow because what I'm trying to solve by building this product matters to the people I care for, and that's why I'm doing it.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. And then the next thing that I want to go into here is, how do you stay motivated and continue to innovate with your role in the venture community?
As I cry myself to sleep and I wake up and, and then I drink a bunch of coffee and I go keep doing it. Sorry, Gabe. No.
I feel that on a spiritual level.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. So again, it's the community. Honestly, there's been many times throughout the years, building a community. This is, starting this organization is very much like building a startup. Really was everything from the ground up. But it's all public speaking in the beginning. A lot of events. We still do a ton of events. The events always motivate me. Bringing people together motivates me. At the end of every event season, when I say event season, is when we're like building big events. Again, we had 9 and 8 weeks just this summer, so we headed into our fall cohort, which literally kicked off, with a small orientation last week. We're going to do a big in-person session, and we're going to have in-person programs for the rest of the year. We're the only chapter around in the world right now that's running in-person programs. That's by design. And going into that room is what motivates me. Seeing these bright, doughy-eyed, just 40-year-old founders that don't know anything about anything. They're not even founders yet. They can barely spell entrepreneur. And but knowing that the ones that will stay, because most will quit, really care about what they're doing, and watching them go from this timid, demure person that might be good or decent or terrible at public speaking, shine 4 months later. I put them on a stage in front of 200 people at University of Texas at Austin, in Rolling Hall's Crum Auditorium, beautiful state-of-the-art facility. We've been doing our demo days there for 2 years now. And they're a completely different person. They're transformed into something bigger and brighter than they ever thought possible. That's what motivates me. But in between those, yeah, I'm probably crying myself to sleep.
Like that. Yeah. Hopefully we could end this on a more positive note too. 'Cause I think we got time for one more question. I do want to make sure that I ask this one. So looking ahead, what are your predictions for the Austin ecosystem over the next, let's say, 5 years? What steps should be taken to ensure that we continue to thrive and attract new top tier startups and investors?
Well, you can go two ways. One, we continue this complacency journey that's happening right now, and we let incumbents that don't really do too much for anything, they just rest on their laurels and their brand, continue to dominate the conversation and take up all the air in the room, and we die. I don't think it's going to happen, but it could. You inhale enough spice from Dune and you see all of the probabilities of what's possible. And that could be a probability, right? Now, that's one way, right? That's one way that could go. Again, I don't think it can go that way, but I've seen a lot of backsliding. We've lost a lot of accelerator organizations that typically would be a great bounce, a second hit for Founder Institute grads. Techstars is gone. We've lost a variety of other orgs over the years. They show up for some have come into town. They start swinging swinging their bats and all that other stuff. And they're just like, eh. And they leave 18 months later because they're like, why did no one work with us? Well, it's because you thought you were the only game in town and you didn't bother to spend any time getting to know everyone else. There's a few organizations that are doing that right now that have moved in recently, and it's kind of annoying. I wish them the best of luck, but they probably won't be here in another 18 months. Now, with enough of the wherewithal, understanding what made Austin so special pre-pandemic, it would be nice if people that are moving in post-pandemic were aware of that specialness. Maybe it's up to us as the locals, people that have been here for a long time, to maybe educate them, or maybe a little bit more active and engaged. And I deal with this myself. I might be not too active in being proactive. I feel again, if we've already been here, maybe you should reach out to us first. But I'll gladly extend the branch and see if we can make things work. But they don't. So what I'd like to see is a return back to the more collaborative spaces. I'd like to see more access to spaces, where, again, pre-pandemic and, costs, inflation, utilities, everything sucks. But, accessibility to spaces was a lot easier for us to host events, to have conversations like this with you and me, just in a actual human space with humans and other people. So we're just not laughing, or maybe we're making the other people laugh too. I don't know, all the folks on LinkedIn, hopefully I'm making you giggle a little bit in between, oh God, things are dire. They're not as dire as I'm painting them. But man, these are probabilities of what could happen, just based on my now 15 to 20 years experience being in this space. Right? Now, there's certainly some corrections, and this is the politics in the election year. Everybody gets stupid during election years. It's insufferable. I delete all my social media pretty much. Because of that. But once we get through November, I think there'll be some calming too of just the general temperaments in terms of how corporates are spending money. A lot of these organizations, like myself, we operate at the whims of our partners. A lot of them are just holding on the purse strings, like they don't have any money. It's like, come on, you're a Fortune 500. You could definitely help sponsor some events. That's not happening. If people can survive through these next few months, which I know we all can, there is a great opportunity for us to round this corner out, move forward. So as we're getting to these next 5 years, we can continue back on that path. But I feel, since 2020, there's just been a lot of backsliding, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've after having a lot of those discussions with you, so I think you painted what the ecosystem used to look like here, which I don't think anybody has actually gone through that walkthrough with me other than you and CS
Mm.
Freeland with Texas Venture Alliance. And yeah, every single other person is just like, oh yeah, no, everything's perfect right now, and all these.
Well, if I'm being honest, they haven't been in the industry that long.
Well, some of them even I know have
Respectfully to
been.
some of you,
Yeah,
you
I mean,
haven't
for
been.
some people, yeah, but some people that are been here 10 to 20 years, and there was one other individual, and I'm forgetting their name, but and you did this as well, kind of just walking through Austin, right? Walking through downtown and saying, hey, here's what this building used to be. Here's what how this landscape used to look like, right? And who are the major players here, and how did they operate, and how do we get things like that back, and having that kind of an open dialogue, because I don't think things are terrible, but I think that we can be doing a lot better. Like I think that 3% of the totals for both physical and digital startups, we can do a lot better. Like the amount of
Mhm.
billionaires that are in Austin, and like we even talked about one of them very recently. I was like, oh wow, I didn't even know he moved here, stuff like that. Like they're investing, and they're definitely investing in the Bay, and they're investing in LA, and all these other areas, because you hear about the deals they're investing in, but it's also getting them to invest here in Austin. And some of them are moving programs here, right? I mean, you have Launch coming out here. You have a lot of other things that are start a lot of major corporations that are continuing to move into Austin. I mean, Tesla with their Gigafactory and everything else. I mean, you see people in certain ways putting their money where their mouth is, but also it's like got to have a lot more of that push. I feel. And there is a question in here from Scott Johnson. I'm going to put it on here so you can see it too. But he said he didn't see anything on the list for the events for FI. I don't know if we posted anything for the upcoming
Well,
stuff. I know
Scott,
we do.
because our event season's over, so we don't have any events. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
we
say.
will be
The cohort
hosting.
just started.
We're hosting a couple throughout the rest of the year. And I'll give you all a little sneak peek. We're going to be doing some. We're doing something pretty funny. I'm saying that explicitly. I'm not going to tell you what, but doing something pretty funny during Austin Tech Week. That'll be hopefully be announced in the next couple of weeks. Um, we're going to be working with CS. We mentioned CS and Texas Venture Fest on a couple of events. There's some stuff in Round Rock as well as San Antonio. So be on the lookout for that. They're already starting to roll out that programming. So we'll be announcing hopefully this week. And you'll find the majority of this stuff either on Luma. We'll have these hosted on our main Founder Institute website once those go live. But if you want to register, we have a Founder Institute Texas Luma page where we host the majority of our local events. And depending on the style event, you might discover us on the Hosh website as well. So just be on the lookout. We also host a holiday party at the end of the year. It's a great toy drive fundraiser. We raised about $1,500 last year, a mix of toys and cash for the Safe Austin Alliance, which helps children who have been coming from abusive households, find some respite out of all that pain. So we'll be doing that again. That'll be the first week of December, and then we'll be hosting our demo day, which is always a big public event over at the University of Texas at Austin on the 18th of December, following week. So just be on the lookout. But yeah, right now, Scott, there's a reason why you didn't see any events because we don't have any right now.
I was like, I know there are some things coming up. I've assumed that because the cohort started. So cohort officially just started. We're doing, actually another in-person session tomorrow, actually. So,
Yep. And
yeah.
and we'll probably have maybe like a founder forum or a workshop before the end of the year as well. That'll help kind of kick off our spring 2025 recruitment season. That semester will be starting in February. Kind of bleeds through South by Southwest, and of course, if you've been to a South by Southwest event of ours, you know it's a good time.
And all right, well, thank you for that as well. And so I'm going to start with wrapping everything up because I know we're a little bit over time here as well. But no, I really appreciate you for jumping on, man. How can people connect with you, after today's session?
Um, I'm pretty easy to Google. Just type in my name and Founder Institute, I pop right up. A very redundant name. You can follow me on the interwebs just at that handle that you see on LinkedIn. Martin Martins goes on Instagram, goes on Twitter, goes on anything. So I'm pretty easy to find.
Nice. Awesome. And yeah, so yeah, definitely make sure everybody connects with Martine. And yeah, thank you again for jumping on. And so for Founding Titans, just to let you guys know, for anybody that might not be privy, so we are building a community-focused relationship optimization platform, and we're building that to help pre-seed to Series A startups with finding the right connections and resources for their businesses. And so we have our wait list open right now. I'm going to toss that in the chat here, foundingtitans.com for those of you that have not signed up. Tell your friends, tell your loved ones, everybody in the startup ecosystem. Our core competency is going to be an AI matchmaking system that's going to match founders with vetted service providers, funding opportunities like grants and investors, as well as communities and events that are startup centric. And so definitely encourage all of you to sign up for that. And I'm posting it in here just a sec because I also have 3 different tabs open to because there were some things that I was going to post in here. All right. And let me go back to my notes here. Sorry, I'm not on my multiple screens today, guys. I'm on my one, just on my laptop. And so next week we are going to have Nia with Forum Ventures here, and we are going to be talking about women in venture capital. And so definitely encourage all of you to sign up for that event. If you would like to listen in, next Tuesday at 2:00 Central Standard Time is when we'll have her here for that. And want to thank all of you for coming here and listening to both of us today. And then if you guys have missed anything, then definitely make sure that, you play the recording after this is over. And yeah, thanks again.
Thanks, y'all.